These are the 5 most iconic female composers of classical music history. Western classical music history has thrived from the 8th century all the way to the 21st century. There are so many classical music composers, but so many are left unheard, especially the female composers. We all know Bach, Mozart, and Handel, but what about Clara Schumann, Fanny Mendelssohn, and Alexina Louie? Today we're talking about Hildegard Von Bingen, Clara Schumann, Fanny Mendelssohn, Ethel Smyth, alicecoltrane, and Alexina Louie. Let's talk about the first female composer on our list. So Hildegard von Bingen is one of the most leading composers of the medieval era in Germany. She was born in the year 1098. She was known as Saint Hildegard and was a German saint, writer, composer, philosopher, visionary, and mystic, and the list just goes on. She is truly one of the West's most remarkable figures during the late Middle Ages. For the first half of her life, her experiences and rich talents were hidden. She was shut away in an obscure monastery in Rhineland. At the age of 43, she finally published her visions and knowledge. In the last half of her life, she would write her visions but also work in natural science, spiritual poetry, and engage in many important personalities in churches. She left behind a treasure chest of manuscripts, scholarly writings, and songs for her nuns to sing at devotions. However, her works were still kept and performed privately. She's known for her sacred monophony, as well as being one of the best recorded composers of the Middle Ages. If you don't know, monophony is basically like singing with one voice, and it's one line of melody. She was also a founder of scientific natural history in Germany. All her works were written in medieval Latin. Some of her works including Know the Ways, composed in 1142, Book of Life's Merits, 1153, and the Book of Divine Works. Her most famous pieces was Ordo Virtuum, and this was composed in year 1151 and is the oldest surviving musical drama not written for church use. In the Middle Ages, while music was both sacred and secular, mostly sacred and vocal, but still also secular, there were a high emphasis on sacred music. Her music is just one lone, beautiful voice, and I really appreciate that. Interest in this amazing composer really sparked after 800 years after her death, and people finally started appreciating her music more. Next up, we have Fanny Mendelssohn. I'm sure the name sounds familiar. She was the sister of her more famous counterpart, Felix Mendelssohn. She was born in 1805 and passed in 1847. While being very talented and a prodigy, just like Felix, unfortunately, only because she was a woman, she was prohibited from experiencing the same opportunities and support and developing her talents, leaving her shadowed by her brother. Felix actually referred to her as Minerva, which is the Roman goddess of wisdom, as she was highly developed in musical and intellectual insights. So Fanny's virtuosity on the piano equaled, if not surpassed, her brother's. Fanny was probably even better than her brother, actually. Her compositions included a piano trio, piano quartet, an orchestral overture, 4 cantatas, 125 piano pieces, and over 250 lieders, which are German songs, most of which are unfortunately unpublished. Her father did not support her careers, saying that music could only become her brother's profession while she could only become an ornament. Unfortunately, 6 of her songs were published under Felix names instead of rightfully hers, and this was the only way for female composers to kind of get credit for their work, is to be published under their brother's name or another male family member's name, which is just incredibly unfair. But this was the only way for her voice and musical creativity to be honored. A great milestone came in 1846 when Fanny finally published a collection of her songs known as Opus 1 under her married name Fanny Hensel. While researching her, I listened to some of her works. They are similar to Felix, honestly, if not better. I find myself frequently revisiting her pieces, specifically her Nocturne in G minor, one of my favorites. It is so good. Despite all her challenges, she established a precedent for the acceptance of women in a traditionally male-dominated artistic profession. Next up, we have Clara Schumann, another composer often tied to Fanny Mendelssohn, and is one of the most prominent composers of all time. She was married to the famous composer Robert Schumann and was an iconic German pianist, composer, and piano teacher. She is seen as one of the most distinguished pianists of the Romantic era. She was born in 1819 and passed away in 1896, and she was encouraged by her father, who was an abusive music teacher, to study piano from a young age. She was a child prodigy, honored by the Austrian court and elected to be the prestige society of the Friends of Music in Vienna. Her father disapproved her marriage to Schumann, who was a student of his, and did everything he could to stop it. Despite becoming the mother of 8 children, she continued her career teaching at the Leipzig Conservatory. Johannes Brahms, a famous romantic composer, shared a very close friendship with Clara. However, they were never together. Clara faced many challenges, including her father's abuse and the loss of 4 of her children at young ages. During the 1849 May uprising in Dresden, she planned an escape for her family, as Revolutionary Guards were going door to door conscripting men to fight. She fled Dresden with Robert and her eldest daughter Marie, leaving her other 3 children behind to avoid suspicion. She returned the following day to rescue them, despite being 7 months pregnant at the time. Clara had an incredibly successful career, making 38 trips out of Germany, crossing the English Channel 19 times to perform in British Isles. She performed even late in her pregnancy and didn't even cancel a concert after learning about her daughter's passing. She published an incredible repertoire of works despite significant restrictions women faced at the time in publishing their music. She is known for her 3 romances, and it's just amazing. I love it. And her piano concerto, which she premiered at the age of 16, conducted by Mendelssohn. All in all, Clara had one of the longest and most wide-ranging careers of any 19th century European pianist and was an amazing and successful composer as well. We're going to go more further into time and talk about Ethel Smyth. So Ethel Smyth was born in 1858 and passed in 1944. She was an English composer and a prominent member of the women's suffrage movement, which fought for women's right to vote, a movement that lasted 80 years. Her compositions included songs, piano works, chamber music, orchestral works, choral pieces, and operas. Smyth was queer and very open about it, having romantic and sexual relationships throughout her life with well-known figures, including the Princess of Polignac, women's suffrage leader Emmeline Pankhurst, and writers Virginia Woolf. Smyth became a leader of the suffrage movement, putting her passion and vigor into both the movement and her art. She led processions, gave speeches, and was even arrested, tried, convicted, and sent to Holloway Prison. Smyth wrote a march called Song of Freedom and a Cry of Liberty. Romantic era composers in England tended to write contemplative and dreamy works because this was the Romantic era. It's all about deep emotional thought and deep emotional feeling from music. But Smyth told the truth through her spirited and active pieces. These include The Wreckers and Boatswain's Mate, 2 of her operas. Smyth was known to be a perfectionist, demanding extensive preparation and rehearsal. She was stubborn, indomitable, and unconquerable, traits that made her one of the most remarkable people of her time and undoubtedly one of the most iconic composers of all time. Next up, we have Alicecoltrane. She was born in 1937 and passed away in 2007. She was an amazing American jazz musician, composer, band leader, and Hindu spiritual leader. She was an accomplished harpist and pianist, innovating and creating a musical style that was not been fully explored before, jazz harp. Coltrane was a pioneer in spiritual jazz and was married to jazz saxophonist John Coltrane. She shifted her focus into religious education, where she served as a spiritual director. She recorded several albums of Hindu devotional songs before returning to her most celebrated style, spiritual jazz, in the final years of her life. The death of her husband deeply affected her, leading to severe weight loss, sleepless night, and hallucinations. During this dark period, she found solace in studying Hinduism in the early 1770s. She abandoned her secular life and moved to California. She's really well known for her harp improvisations, which are truly just stunning. Her music features breathtaking glissandos and a sense of egolessness. Watching her perform, I watched a video of her performance, and it was just mesmerizing. One comment, I think they described it best, and they described her music and her care towards her instrument while playing as a mother brushing her daughter's hair. And this, I think, is just the best description of it. It perfectly captures the love, care, and spirituality she infused in her music. If you're interested in jazz or harp or jazz harp, I highly recommend exploring her compositions. Finally, we turn to Alexina Louie, a Canadian and Asian composer. I remember studying her music and thinking, this is amazing, and it blends so well with my cultural background as well. She's born in 1949, and Louie is a 21st century composer, and she won the Juno Award for Classical Composition of the Year twice. And she currently lives in Toronto and was born in Vancouver, British Columbia, and earned her ARCT in piano performance from the Royal Conservatory of Music at the age of 17. The ARCT, if you didn't know, is the equivalent of a bachelor's degree. Louie has composed many incredible piano pieces and orchestral works, as well as operas and plays. And one of her operas, The Scarlet Princess, is based on a 17th century Japanese kabuki play. She also wrote a comic mini opera called Toothpaste, composed in 1995. Yes, you'd heard me right, Toothpaste, which is a really unique concept for an opera. And then completed Burnt Toast, I'm not kidding, these names are actually crazy, an opera for television in 2005. These titles are just hilarious, and they're nothing like traditional operas. Another one for pieces is called In a Flash, and is one of my favorite 21st century pieces overall. It is just beautiful, and I highly recommend that you check it out. And what makes her music truly just so special is that she incorporates Asian influences into Western classical music. For example, Music for Heaven and Earth, a piano suite she composed, reflects her Asian heritage. In Asian music, there's a pentatonic scale is basically 5 notes per octave. There's C, let's say C, D, E, G, A. And that's usually commonly used, and Louie often incorporates it into her compositions. And this pentatonic scale, it usually brings a more like vibrant tone to your music, and truly, when you see that incorporated in Louie's music, you can see that vibrant and unique feel compared to more of a Western European classical music. Alexina Louie, she's always felt a connection with Chinese history, which also resonates deeply with me as part of my heritage too. And while she is devoted to avant-garde methods, her heritage remains a strong influence in her work. Alright, that's all to the video. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the top 6 most iconic female composers. Your support means everything to me. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and let me know your thoughts, and stay tuned and keep listening and learning. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!